Okay, let's get right into it. Today, we've got a fantastic puzzle for you. It's about how a 50-year-old airplane, one that the Pentagon's been trying to get rid of for decades, somehow became the key to solving a multi-billion-dollar crisis that had the most advanced Navy on the planet totally stuck.
So here's where the story kicks off. If you just look at the scoreboard, the U.S. Navy was absolutely crushing it. They took out or disabled 120 Iranian warships. I mean, by any traditional standard, that is a clear, decisive victory.
And just look at the firepower they brought to the fight. We're talking $40 billion worth of naval hardware. You've got carrier strike groups, the latest destroyers, literally the best of the best, all deployed in one spot.
But here's the kicker. Even though they were winning every single fight, this was the result. 95%. That's how much of the commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz just stopped. The oil wasn't flowing. The global economy was taking a massive hit. It was, no other way to put it, a strategic disaster. So that brings us to the core question of this whole explainer. How could a force that was so powerful, so successful in every engagement, fail so spectacularly at its actual mission? Well, the answer is kind of weird and absolutely brilliant. Now, to really get why this solution works, you have to understand the problem itself. And this isn't about open ocean warfare. What we're looking at here is what military folks call a 6-mile knife fight. It's close, it's messy, and it's dangerous. And that knife fight happens in what's known as a brown water conflict zone. This is so important. See, the U.S. Navy is the king of blue water. That's the deep open ocean. Brown water, it's the exact opposite. It's cramped, it's full of civilian boats, and you're right next to the coast.
And this is where the deck is really stacked against you. The shipping lane is only 6 miles wide. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. It's swarming with over 3,000 civilian ships, which makes it incredibly hard to see what's what. And your enemy isn't another big navy. It's a swarm of more than 1,500 tiny, fast-attack boats designed to overwhelm you all at once. This table really just lays it all out. It's the heart of the problem: asymmetric warfare. You've got a $2.2 billion destroyer on one side, and on the other, a little fiberglass speedboat that costs less than a fancy SUV. The destroyer is this huge, precious target, and the boats are tiny, there are tons of them, and they're completely disposable. And this is the math that was just killing the whole strategy. I mean, think about it. You're using a $5 million missile to take out a $50,000 boat. That is a 100-to-1 cost mismatch, and it's all in the enemy's favor. You could win every single fight and still go broke, still lose the war, just because you run out of missiles.
So, the issue wasn't that the Navy's weapons were bad. They're amazing. They were just the totally wrong tools for this specific job. It was kind of like showing up to a messy, chaotic bar fight with a bunch of delicate, high-tech surgical lasers.
Let's just quickly run through why this high-tech toolkit wasn't working. The Super Hornets, way too fast. Pilots couldn't tell friend from foe. The ship's big guns, they just don't fire fast enough to stop a swarm. And the CWS, that last-ditch Gatling gun, it's out of ammo in 20 seconds and takes 4 minutes to reload. The Seahawk helicopters, well, they're just too fragile and can't stick around in the fight long enough.
And so, at a dead end, the Navy had to make a call to the Air Force for a plane that was pretty much already being measured for its spot in the museum. And this is where the entire story flips on its head.
You know, before it swooped in to save the day, this was the official opinion on the A-10 Warthog. You had top officials in the Pentagon calling it obsolete, a relic from the Cold War that was built to kill Soviet tanks on the plains of Europe, not to patrol the seas. But it turns out that that obsolete plane was the absolute 100% perfect tool for this very specific, very modern fight. Why? Well, it had all the things that the Navy's multi-billion-dollar fleet was missing.
And this slide, right here, this is the game changer. The cost per kill. The Navy's missile? $5.3 million. The A-10, it gets the same job done with a quick burst from its cannon for about 10 grand. That's a 500-to-1 cost advantage. This doesn't just make the math better, it completely rewrites the entire economic rulebook for the conflict.
So how does it do it? Well, all the things that were supposedly its weaknesses are actually its biggest strengths here. It flies slow, which means pilots can actually see what they're shooting at. It can loiter, just circle over the fight, for hours at a time. Its cannon is the stuff of legends. I mean, they literally designed the gun first and then built the plane around it. And on top of all that, it is ridiculously tough. The pilot sits inside a 1,200-pound titanium bathtub that can take a direct hit and keep on flying. But look, one plane, no matter how awesome, can't secure that whole corridor by itself. The real stroke of genius here wasn't just using the A-10, it was plugging it into this whole new strategy, a three-layer defense that brought together different branches of the military in a way that had never really been done before.
So this is how it works. You've got 3 layers. Up high, at 3,000 feet, you have the Air Force A-10s hunting the speedboats. Then, down low, at 200 feet, you have Army Apache helicopters waiting to pick off anything that slips through the cracks. And what does that do? It leaves the Navy ships on the surface free to focus on what they do best, acting as a massive shield against more serious threats like anti-ship missiles.
So just look at this before and after. Before, the Navy was just burning through its most valuable resource, those expensive missiles in its launch cells, on these cheap little boats. It was totally unsustainable. After, the go-to weapon is a $10,000 burst from a cannon on a plane that can stay on station all day. The result? You go from unsustainable losses to sustainable control. Problem solved.
You know, this whole situation teaches us a really powerful lesson about modern conflict, but it also raises a pretty big question about what comes next. If you take one thing away from all this, it should be this. The most expensive, most high-tech tool isn't always the winner. A good craftsman doesn't use a sledgehammer to hang a picture frame, right? You pick the right tool for the job. And in the Strait of Hormuz, the right tool just happened to be a 50-year-old plane that everybody wanted to send to the scrapyard.
But, and this is the final twist in the story, this amazing problem solver is living on borrowed time. For now, Congress is keeping the A-10 fleet flying, but that protection ends in just a couple of years, and the retirement plan is already on the books. And that leaves us with one last really critical question. The Warthog proved that you need something cheap, tough, and slow for these messy, close-in fights. So when it finally does fly off into the sunset, what's going to fill that gap? That's a question the Pentagon better have an answer for, and fast.